I'm thrilled and delighted to present today the push and pull of platforms. This is a new kind of event for us here at Projectkin, and I'm very excited about the approach, this time beginning in our Pacific edition of these programs. I expect this is going to be a series, but let's sort of see what happens and the feedback and thoughts, so I am very definitely listening to all of you. Today's program is going to be a conversation. I've asked our speakers not to prepare slides or any kind of a presentation. We've shared a little bit in terms of the nature of the discussion to get started, but you will find it very open and conversational. I will ask that you post questions into the chat, and I can be monitoring that so I don't distract our speakers. But if I do miss anything and we break into questions, feel free to bring those up as we get started. For those of you for whom Projectkin is new, I'll be brief. I know I recognize many of you. Projectkin is a community, simple as that. We are uh, intensely independent, platform independent. I started Projectkin in part after having my own startup not make it. I know what it takes to build a platform. I know a lot about why and how platforms work, and also a healthy appreciation for the business models that make it work and what we're trying to do. Like a vagabond, I, with my our hardy band of our community, found our way to Substack just a little over a year ago, and frankly, it's been a good model for us. Unlike many other platforms, it is one that is funded, at least for now, and that's an important point, as a when so when publications go on a paid structure, and it takes a percentage of that payment. So there's no advertising. And I, as managing this community with everything we do, which by the way includes the video posting, pay nothing. So since my costs are virtually nothing except for Zoom, um, Zoom and my calendaring mechanisms, I keep everything free, and I am committed to keeping everything free because I think this is an important kinds of conversations to have happen, and I can afford to do that. I do accept contributions, which have been entirely voluntary, entirely using the Buy Me a Coffee platform, which has worked out very nicely. And in fact, I'm proud to say in 2024, the generous contributions of including many of you, have meant that our entire Zoom bill has been covered. Thank you very much. Now, today's talk includes two fabulous longtime genealogists and genealogy bloggers from Australia and New Zealand. And I asked them, each of them had been in this delicate stages of thinking thoughtfully, carefully about their own materials, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they're bringing it into Substack, but also using other platforms. And I thought it would be the basis for an interesting conversation about where we go. And they were both gracious enough to say yes. So joining us from Victoria, Australia, is Jennifer Jones, who moved her longtime blog Tracking Down the Family, which had been on WordPress, into Substack. And she's now considering bringing her One Place Study to the We Are One Place Study platform and combining it with Substack. What and how, I think, is really the interesting part. Jane Chapman of Wellington, New Zealand, has two family history archives and a One Place Study on the weare.xyz platform. She has been considering how to best combine these with Substack. She's recently been writing on Substack at BJNS Genealogy, and she'll tell you about that, drawing on information from her BJNS L's. I got the number wrong. Family History Archive, all of which will be in our links and the resources at the conclusion of this. She hasn't yet decided how she'll use Substack in relation to her one place study about the Kyburn diggings, and she'll tell you some more about that. Now, one important point is that yes, I am recording this program, and it will be available, of course, for free to all of you participating. But really, I think of these sessions as being the live studio audience for the program itself, which is delivered as a recording, along with a very rich set of resources, links, embeds, anything we can think of that makes the story better. And frankly, I come up with that after the recording and I learn about what all is happening. So that gives you a little bit of background. One further thought, I planned this. I started thinking about it last September, October, really, and started pitching a number of people about what they were doing. This first one turned out to fit in the calendar in January. I anticipate doing a comparable program for the Atlantic time zone. Here at Projectkin, I time the world into two windows that are centered on California, so I keep my head straight. One is in our California afternoons, which is this one, scheduled for the convenience of the Pacific region. I sometimes call this the Pacific edition. I also have one scheduled in our California mornings, which I call the Atlantic edition, which tends to be a better, more convenient time for our friends from the UK, Europe, and across the Americas. The Americas benefit, and I say the Americas, including my Canadian friends to the north and all our English speaking friends to the south. Because that's where I just happened to fit. Who knew? Perhaps Greenwich Mean Time would have been based in California if they'd thought about it. Maybe not, but it's okay to be a little bit self-centered on something like time. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started with a conversation? And I wanted to start really to have Jennifer, start with you, Jennifer, and then I'll have Jane follow to share a little bit about where they are right now. Tell us about your platform and what you are doing now. And then we'll follow that with a discussion of where you're headed and why. All right. How about that, Jennifer? Tell us some
Yep,
more.
sounds good. Sounds good. So I brought my platform over to Substack in January, and took me a little while to sort of work out what I was going to do with it. But I've decided it's going Substack. I'm keeping the WordPress blog going, but Substack is going to be my main platform for telling the stories, linking back to WordPress. So many of my followers came over when I moved over to Substack, including, I had a lot of distant cousins that had contacted me over the years. Quite a lot of them came over, but not all of them. So that is the main reason I've decided to link back to WordPress. I was going to close it down. So I've only started doing this in the last few weeks. My plan is that each month I will write a post in WordPress talking about what has been happening with tracking down the family in Substack and linking to some interesting things. And I do a Sunday snippets thing where I talk about what I've been doing over the week in genealogy. So I'll link those posts back there. And that so far is working. There have been followers come over, which I didn't want to lose them because they were distant cousins and they were valuable to me. So that's the plan there. But other than that, my main thing in Substack, other than the Sunday snippets, is telling my family stories so they're not lost.
How do you measure it's been working? How do you measure working?
Comments. I get a lot more comments on Substack. There is a lot more engagement.
Yeah.
The other thing against Substack, I suppose, not against it, but that hasn't worked so well, and is partly why I'm linking back, I haven't had any contact from cousins from anywhere around the world through the newsletter on Substack. But I'm still getting them, even though I haven't been posting, I'm still getting them on WordPress. So I think when they Google, like their family name or whatever, WordPress is still coming up.
Do you have exactly the same content in both places?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
In fact, I have been importing posts that I've felt are important over just slowly over
Yeah.
to Substack. But the new posts I've written on Substack haven't gone over to WordPress until this last couple of weeks.
Okay.
So
One
I'm
thing
not sure. Yep.
now that will, I think toward the end, we can come back to some kind of best practices and things to be
Yep.
cautious of that are kind of technical issues, but we'll come back to
Yep.
that. Very good.
Yep.
Thank you. Jane, can you tell us a little bit about your approach? Why and so on, the same question.
Um, well, I guess I have sort of I to use your push and pull thing. I've got a sort of core archive where I pull together everything. It's well, as you mentioned before, three archives actually, two family history ones and a one place study, and they all come together in the we are dot xyz c for you. um, on that platform, and it's the place where it's the core archive and the base of engagement, I guess, in that people I know, family I know, I can invite into that or I can share. And I can put everything there. It's got media, it's got artifacts, it's got documents, it's got everything, and it's all interlinked. And it's just, for me, it works well as a repository for everything. And that's sort of the core archive and the base layer of engagement. And then in terms of sort of pushing out to a wider group for engagement, I'm now using Substack. And I started in Substack about 3 months ago. I think was that my first post was, well, shall I or shan't I? Shall I Substack or not? And at that point, I had a blog which is connected to the We Are platform. It's the archives there have an integrated blog that you can use as well. I still have it, but I'm not really using it, and I'm getting very close to deleting it. I think because it's superfluous. It's what I'm drawing out on Substack now. I'm drawing from that, and that actually initially came from a blog that I had on Blogger a long time ago. That I got fed up with Blogger, and when We Are started, I decided to move all the stuff I had there into my archive and into my integrated blog there.
Mhm.
And so what I'm now pulling into Substack, actually, I've written some new things, but a lot of what I'm pulling in is coming through from what I'd written before.
Mhm.
So I've sort of got this other blog sitting in the middle now, which I think I will probably delete because it's stuff repeated everywhere, and I'm not sure that's great. So yeah, I think that the blog function on We Are isn't that great at the moment, but I think there are plans to enhance it, and who knows in the future, I mean, maybe that will become much more sophisticated and I might switch back, who knows. But at the moment,
Yeah.
I'm really happy with something really simple. The core archive to pull things in, the Substack to push things out, because my main predominant thing, I think, is to try and engage and connect with more distant family, people with the same research interests. That's really why I write.
You know,
And I've
Go
said
on.
to you before, Barbara, I'm not really a writer. I'm a genealogist who writes,
Yeah.
so I'm quite focused on sort of sharing my family history and doing it in as accurate a way as possible. So I'm not really writing stories. I'm really sharing information, but trying not to do it too boringly. um, so I think, yeah, I think that's sort of where I'm at. And then to push even further, I use Blue Sky for the short form posts. Of course, Substack has its own short form, and you can use that to reinforce what's on Substack. But I think wider engagement, you can go out somewhere like Blue Sky. And so I'm using Blue Sky. For a little while, I flirted with Mastodon and Threads, but yeah, not so good. I'm still there, but I don't really look at it very much. It's really Blue Sky I'm focused on now. So I've sort of got those three layers, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulously insightful way to break it down. Both of you have described really the separate functions of the place to write and then, push in and then push out. And using platforms like Substack and Blue Sky as outbound essentially, and then watching how that engagement works and things like that. And how do you measure success, Jane? That was a question I asked Jennifer as well.
I think similarly to what Jennifer said, really, it's about people. When I notice people subscribe after they've read something, or comments that people make, or if they restack or whatever. To be honest, I didn't go into it with the view of amassing subscribers. It was more about sharing information, but I must confess that when you see people subscribe or comment, you do get a bit of a thrill. It's nice. Somebody's appreciated it.
Hey, dopamine is real.
Yeah. At the same time, I've had people unsubscribe and you think, oh, but that's okay, because you don't always know what you're getting until you subscribe and read a few posts. So, and not everything is everybody's cup of tea, so that's okay. I don't mind if people unsubscribe, but I think that's how you measure where you're going, really.
You bring up an interesting point about I don't know where this is going. So of course I'm going to ask you, where do you think this is going take a 5-year kind of time horizon. As we get into doing something, we usually have some idea of where this is heading. What do you think that is, Jane? And Jennifer, I'm coming back to you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it's heading. My big focus, given my age and stage in life, is to make sure that I'm preserving family history. And there's more research to do, but it's also a lot of research that I have that I would really like to write up in more narrative form, because it tells the story rather than just dates and profiles. So I'm not sure it's going anywhere other than to keep doing what I'm doing to get as much documented as I can before I lose my marbles or kick the bucket or whatever. In 5 years' time, I'm going to be approaching 80, so
How about you, Jennifer?
Very similar to Jane. I'm not sure where it's going, but I do feel more positive about it on Substack than I was towards the end on WordPress, because I felt engagement on WordPress was dwindling, and there were less people blogging than there were, like, for example, when I started 12 years ago. And I noticed less sharing, sharing my posts around, that was happening less, which doesn't really bother me, but in a way, that's how sometimes your family members or distant family members find you, by other people sharing or whatever. But I notice on Substack there's a lot of share, like restacking, and a lot of interests. And I have comments from people who are not there, who have newsletters that are nothing to do with genealogy or family history. So I find that quite interesting. Somehow they find you there and think they'll subscribe for a little while, and like Jane, I've had a few unsubscribers, which I don't bother about that. And the same as Jane, I came on there to have an archive exist after I've gone of my family stories. So where I'm going is working out what I'm going to do to archive the documents now, so that they exist. I used to, sorry.
Go ahead.
On WordPress, before I really started honing in on just telling my family stories, I used to include documents in my posts so that they were out there in the world. And the National Archives in Australia, for a while, were asking people to apply to have their blogs archived. So my blog is archived there, but I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen to that either in the future. I think I'm more positive that Substack will keep going, I think, as long as I don't start charging too much or anything. But I'm going to look at We Are to use as an archive, or I came across Notion, which I've only had a little look, but I need to do a deep dive into both Notion and We Are to decide what to do there. So yeah.
You know, I guess I have to confess that some of what led me into thinking about this particular program comes out of my many years' experience as a product manager. In tech companies, there are people like me sitting around thinking about what features should we implement. I remember 100 years ago with a product called Timbuktu, most of you will never have heard of. We had a feature that allowed, it was a one-to-one chat, and we thought it was brilliant. But really, was it a product or was it a feature of a product? And that fundamental question of what segments am I coming into and breaking into, and how does it fit into my product or not? Has always been important. We saw blogging starting as a feature addition to a kind of very simple website. And what we back in the 90s and what we have seen with each of these are innovations that are springing one on top of the other. Substack started as a newsletter platform, which I think most of us are old enough to remember newsletters before there was a web
Yeah.
in like the 70s when they were like sent as news by the letters. And as they've added features, they are encroaching on other people's markets. The explosion in our segment since Elon Musk acquired Twitter primarily has really changed a lot of fundamentals. And that's where I think things like people saying for protest reasons to say, okay, I don't need Facebook anymore. Goodbye. It gave me an
Yeah.
excuse to say goodbye. And if you're saying goodbye to Facebook, why aren't you also on the same reason? Why aren't you also saying goodbye on Instagram and Threads? It's
Yeah.
creating a big change. And we've always talked about these as, just these moments that create everything else. So what I love about where this is going is you've separated out the pieces of the stored archive, the preservation archive, not necessarily the same thing. You brought up the question of archiving your online blog, online materials. I know for Ponga, we push things out to the Internet Archive because you can, with a Wayback Machine, you just create an account and then you can push back any given page. It's a little messier, it's a little more complicated. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jennifer? And then Jane, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in terms of
I've,
archiving and,
I
your
have
own
thought
archives
about,
versus the internet
sorry.
beyond you.
Yeah. Yeah. I have thought about Internet Archive. I've just had a quick look. I haven't, and it did appear a little bit complicated, and my brain's not really, it prefers simple. The main thing for me, and it's nothing to do with money, is that whatever I do, it's free because after I'm gone, there's more, it will be there. Anything that's not free is going to just finish after I'm gone. And that's where I was with WordPress. My WordPress for tracking down the family was free, but it was becoming almost unmanageable with ads. And I realised I was going to have to go to a paid subscription. And it's not very much money. It doesn't matter. I would have done that. I've done that with other blogs that I have. But that is defeating the purpose of what I want to do to preserve after I'm gone. Yeah, yeah. And as far as the future, I think I mentioned on something the other day, I've discovered my actual niece has taken a DNA test and put a tree on Ancestry. So I'm thinking, she's a bit older now. So she's obviously got an interest. So I will be contacting her. And, I would love to see someone like that take all my information now, even now, because I've got everything digitised. So, and, maybe one day down the future, take over my blog and just continue on where I left off. So I'm not sure whether the younger ones coming up are going to be interested in blogging. They might do things as YouTubes or something totally different. I don't know. So, yeah. It's
Well,
all a lot
information
to think
always
about.
has its place. That's very interesting. How about you, Jane?
Um, Well, I think the good thing about We Are is that although it's a subscription website, if you stop paying your subscription, the site actually stays. It's still
Yeah,
there and family
yeah,
can access it, and they can't add to it without a subscription, but they can access anything that you've done. So the more you get done, the
yeah.
better. Um, so that's a good thing. I haven't really thought about archiving beyond that, really. It's, everything I'm doing, I'm pushing. I've got one archive is, you mentioned BJ&L before, BJ&L's genealogy, which is, it's family history of my husband, who's B, me, J, and our children, N and L. So BJ&L's genealogy is just my immediate family. And everything on there is my biological family because I'm adopted. So I've also got another archive with my adoptive family, and that tends to go back less far because I was just interested really in building the family tree back so far so that I could come back down to the people I actually had knew, great aunts and so on. So that doesn't go back quite as far, and there's not as much work. But my brother, my adopted brother, is a shared admin on that, so he's got access to it. His children have got access to it. My children have got access to it. And the biological one, my children have got access to. Plus some other relations are connected to it as well. So I have those. And then there's the one place study that I've started, which is public, and I have someone collaborating with me on that, and I'm hoping to get more people. So
Yeah.
while it's on my subscription at the moment, one might hope that other people might take that subscription over later if they need to, or at least if nobody does, the basic website and everything we put on it up until that time will still be there. So
Yeah.
I love the
that's about
idea.
as far as I've thought in terms of archiving. Yeah.
I love the idea that both of you have mentioned of essentially designating beneficiaries or finding beneficiaries. And I don't know of a good model for a way to delicately do that. And essentially, you're talking about a contract, to, even if it's
Mm.
never written as a contract, to say, hey, I want you to know that I want you to take over this for me after I'm gone, and I will give you, or am no longer able to do it, and I'm giving you the access or whatever. Here's what I expect you to do as a result. I don't know. It seems to me that would be a good idea. We could do that.
Mm.
And provide a way to do that. The other thing I love about the way you're parsing these out, whether it's We Are, Notion, Substack, WordPress, and all of the other kinds of blogging and website builder tools that are out there, is it starts to parse apart what the function is that you're looking for. And I think both of you have been so delightfully articulate about how you're doing these places. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the chat, but earlier Carmel brought up personal frustration in the stack restack methods that are just part of the way Substack works. And I
Yeah.
think this is a fundamental conflict because on one hand, that kind of thing actually sort of works
Mm.
from a social media push perspective. On the other, it's an annoyance because there's so much, it feels self-promoting. And I think that's sort of what undermines platforms in the long run. I don't really know what solutions there may be for doing that, but it does raise the question of the social side of it, the promotional or let's say outbound side of this. Jennifer, you mentioned a little bit about using, unless I've gotten confused at this point, you mentioned a little about using Blue Sky
Yeah.
to do that. Do you have a routine for how you do that?
No, it's very hit and miss. Actually, I probably I drop in and look at it a lot. I, as far as my Substack goes, I share it on Blue Sky, and you post every time I write a new post. That's probably the most consistent thing I do on Blue Sky. I have other blogs. I share them all on Blue Sky as they're posted. I used to do Twitter and Facebook, but I've sort of given up Facebook, and I've definitely given up Twitter. Tracking Down the Family has a page on Instagram, which I share there also, but I don't, from Substack, don't really get much engagement to the Instagram page. And I will post one day, and maybe halfway towards the next week, 3 or 4 days later, I might put a note up on Substack with a link to the post that I posted a few days ago. I don't do that a lot because, as you said, it's sort of, I don't know, self-promotion goes a little bit against the grain. I don't know. I don't mind doing it on Blue Sky and other platforms, but doing it on the platform that I wrote the post on, for some reason in my head, just
No, I think you're right. And you know what? I think we're figuring out best practices, because Notes has only been around as a feature for the last, I don't know, probably less than a year. And, as someone who's essentially using it for business, I'm trying to figure that out too. I've learned to hold back. I do put notes out about my own posts, but I try to hold back. And I'm thrilled when somebody else does, because then I could talk about that without just talking about myself. So yeah, it's a challenge. Do you use much social media, Jane?
No, not really. I'm in Blue Sky, and
From time to time, you had been on the Facebook group, the private group for We Are
so
users,
the
right?
private group for We Are, yeah, I'm an admin on that group, so yeah, I'm on there.
Yeah. It feels
Yeah,
bad walking
that's
away
there
from
to
that,
help people using We Are.
which you've
So
done
yes,
very
I
well.
do post things on there, but that's really about supporting people that are using the platform.
Yeah,
Rather
exactly.
than necessarily pushing out my own stuff, although sometimes I put my own stuff there to illustrate something I'm talking about. Blue Sky, I'm only really just starting to, I only recently went onto it, and I'm just starting to figure out how to use it. I join in all the usual sort of chats on there, like Gen Hour, and if an opportunity comes up to post something, I will, but I haven't actually deliberately posted anything yet. I'm just sort of working up to that, I think.
All of these platforms are so funny, the way it takes a while for a given community to latch into it. I first signed up for Blue Sky, I don't know, like a year ago, when T2 and Pebble
Yeah.
and
Well, I went there
Mastodon
too.
and whatever. I was on them all.
Yeah.
And I found nobody on Blue Sky. I had like 16 followers, and it was, here we all are, and that's it. But who were lovely. Don't get me wrong, but it was crickets. So I said, okay, enough of this. And I dropped, and then everybody moved to Blue Sky. I'm like, all
Yeah, I
right,
think
I'm
there've
coming, I'm
been
coming.
sort of a few, it's people running away from Twitter, and it's happened in a few stages, and now there are just lots of genealogy people there, but it took a while, I think, for people to move over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I have one last question for the two of you, and then I thought we would open it up for a larger discussion. For the two of you, how have you found your work in this digital online space affecting how you think about your physical artifacts that you might have as an inheritance? The objects, the paintings, drawings, even print photographs that you have in your own personal collection. Jennifer, do you want to go first?
Physical artifacts, I have very few. So I'll probably refer to photos. I've digitized everything. That was my COVID project. Just day
Good for
after
you.
day after day, and night after night after night, I sat there and digitized, all my certificates and files and all my photos, and actually made a bit of a hash of naming the files. So that's my next thing. I need to go back and make the naming just a little bit better, because when we don't need a complicated naming system anymore like we did in the old days, because we have a search. So but artifacts, I haven't really, no, I don't really have much. I've only got one or two things that have been handed down. My family sort of wasn't into doing that very much. So, yeah.
this has just been on my mind because I lost my mom in 2022,
Yeah,
and now in 2025 are still buttoning up the distribution of,
yeah.
and it's hard. How about you, Jane?
I've got one or two of my own, but I have quite a lot of my husband's because his mother gave us she gave us this lovely wooden treasure chest full of postcards, a lot of them written during the First World War, um, and various other things. I've just been gradually photographing and loading them with narratives up to my family history archive, because there is a whole section for artifacts in the We Are archive.
Oh, right.
So I've gradually been loading those up, and I've written a few narratives around some, like some of the World War One postcards, for example. I've then investigated people that sent them. They were all sent to my husband's grandmother, and I've sort of investigated some of the people on there and written up narratives about them. Maybe they'll end up on Substack at some stage. But yeah, that I'm gradually gathering them and actually into the family history archive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think having a reference to physical objects helps us kind of parse out
Oh,
what we're trying to do.
yeah.
When we think of it all as that cloud stuff, we lump it all
Mm.
together when in fact it is separate functions, as we get in there. So we've actually had a number of interesting comments coming in. It's hard for me to read and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
I will say thank you, Kathy Stone, for your point about there was a discussion in her group. Perhaps she is active with our Projectkin and her monthly Kathy's Corner series about archiving and photos and your materials. She was talking about how making the essentially beneficiary discussion of the genealogical archives and materials part of a will, a personal, property will. Which is an interesting bit of feedback. And Carmel gives you a salute, Jane, for your good work in the We Are support team private group within Facebook, which I do as well. A hallelujah on that point. Are there other comments and questions coming in from all of you? Oh, come on. We're all family here. We've talked. Open up. It's okay.
I mean,
Our
how do other
family.
people feel about comments on their blogs? Like, do you want comments or not? I know I'm just referring to We Are because at the moment you can't get comments on there unless people do the ask. Nothing else can see them unless they're logged in. You can invite people in. So I like the comments and I like the followers, and that's why I'm sort of heading back over to WordPress and Substack at the moment.
I
For me,
personally,
yep.
go ahead.
Sorry, Barbara. For me, I love the comments. It just lets me know someone's read it, which is a bit silly, really, because I don't write those posts to know anyone's read it. I'm really writing them to archive them. But, it is good to know someone's read them. And sometimes we have a back and forth, and, the comments that a distant cousin makes are just priceless, because oftentimes we go ahead and form a collaboration, and and it's an ongoing relationship. So that's really great. The comments I don't like are the ones from the young men saying hello, beautiful.
Right. But in WordPress, you can set that up that you can authorize them to approve them to come through. So you
Yeah,
don't get them.
I just report
I
them
don't
to
get
them.
many of those, but
No, yeah. But yeah, I like the comments. Yeah,
I will say that I think that's one of the things that Substack has been doing very, very well is
Yeah.
managing the spam. And I tell myself that when I see my subscriber numbers suddenly plateau for a while and I panic and then they go back up again, the plateauing tends to roughly parallel the same time when I start seeing a lot of those DM messages come in saying, hello.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I report. I have, or rather I delete, and I've been tempted to delete and report just on just saying hello, but that seems a little harsh. But we know who they are.
I'm not sure on WordPress you can turn off your comments if you don't want comments on a certain thing you write. Don't know that you can do that on Substack on a post.
No, I don't
Yes, you
think so.
can.
Can you?
Yes, you
Can
can.
you?
You can
Oh,
do it
right.
on a you can at
Particular.
least do it on a universal level. And you
Yeah.
do that in settings. On a you have to have a
Oh, yeah.
publication. And over in
Yeah.
settings, there's something control of
Okay.
comments, as well as restacks, I believe.
Yeah.
So check
Right.
that out
I'll
in
have a look.
settings.
Can't imagine a post I'd write that I'd want to turn off comments, but you just never know in the future. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I feel a bit the same as Jennifer. I mean, I didn't write in the first place to get the comments, but it's quite nice when you do get
Yeah.
them because you do know someone's
The
appreciating.
engagement from the family, or even I've got some friends that follow me over on WordPress, and she's a local girl and she knows my family. So we banter backwards and forwards with one another, and I love that, you know.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
It's there then, it's in the archive.
Yeah.
Like I've had my uncle, who's now passed away, he's commented on some of my posts, and that's there forever because, you know, his little story that he wrote is there. So that's what
Yeah.
I like about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's history there in the comments as well.
Yeah.
That's
Good.
actually that's a huge point, because I think one of the things that to me is so painful about Facebook in particular, which has been used for family history. You know, there's many private groups for families within Facebook, for example, and then people drop these really precious comments that have all kinds of other stories that are part of them. And that entire content belongs to somebody else. It
Yeah.
belongs to Facebook. And trying to archive that is very, very difficult. Here you have all of that and you can archive it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just super important to
I've
the whole
been known to
approach.
print images off Facebook with conversations with family history stuff.
Yeah.
I'll put it
Yeah.
Yeah,
and keep it.
which,
Yeah.
by the way, you can also do that if you get streams happening in chat certainly on iMessage on an iPhone and probably in Android as well. You can
Do a
actually
screenshot.
export those. Well, you can export a whole threads. It doesn't handle the long images terribly well, but you can do it for a stream, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to be able to print that out. Andrew, you jumped in to turn your video on. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say, I think comments can help you build community, especially if you respond to the
Oh,
comments.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, that it's about, you know, yes, you get the comment, but what do you do with that? Well, I respond to all my comments, and then you see, and, you know, when people have commented, then I'll catch up with those people in real life, say, and they'll go, oh, I saw so-and-so commented, and, you know, how do they fit in and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, you know, that it is an important part of building community is those comments. So.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a really also a very fundamental point, because when you have your publication, it's not just a magazine sitting on a table. What you're
No.
doing is you're building a community of people around that topic
Yeah.
and bringing them in. And yeah, it's a hack, to be perfectly blunt, a social media hack. To go out there and get followers is to go out there and read and give thoughtful comments and really engage with people. And you know what? When you do that, they are going to turn around and look and say, wait a minute, who is this? And pay attention. But oh, guess what? In the process, you actually did what you wanted to do, which was
Yeah.
build community. It's like
Yeah.
telling yourself, I've got to go shake 15 hands in this cocktail party, even though I want to go hide in a rock. But it's a lot easier than shaking hands at a cocktail
Yeah.
party.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I just
Oh.
agree with Andrew about the comments building community. And I found that becomes a community quickly has for me, quickly on Substack. You know, people tend to come back more. Yeah, and quickly it builds up to a community. And, you know, of course, we've got this amazing genealogy community on Substack, and we all support each other, and it's wonderful. So yeah. And I have actually moved my lifestyle blog over. I did that first, and we were a community on WordPress, and we've just about all come over and continued to be a community on Substack, but in a different way. We've sort of grown and become, it's been less official, maybe through the notes and through comments. We used to comment on each other's blogs on a particular day where we all blogged and posted a blog and joined a link up or whatever. And then we wouldn't really hear it from each other until next week when we did it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I found it's a bit like the genealogy community. It's becoming, and we are, joining in with what each other are doing in between times now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Something about the Substack commenting that seems less formal, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That's, I think it's interesting to think about things that are forced because you agreed to do a link group or something like that versus something that's very intentional. For example, Substack has this recommendations, engine, really. On one hand, you can recommend people, and they can recommend you, but rarely is it done, I recommended you, so why didn't you recommend me?
No,
I don't think people do that. In the early days of
No.
LinkedIn, by the way, people did that all the time. It was very awkward.
Yeah.
We figured that one out. I made a rule early on, again, this is about 13 months ago when I joined, that as much as I would love somebody and cheer them on, I could not in good heart recommend their publication when they basically didn't have a publication.
Exactly.
It had Mary's Substack and there was nothing there. Well,
Yeah.
that was actually Substack's problem, not theirs, but Substack was forcing them into this blank publication when they didn't really want to have one. So I've tried in the same way to make sure that I don't just have comments saying nice, although I think I probably have done that a few times, but that I try to have a real comment. And if I don't have something real to say, I might if I like, you know what I mean? Authenticity is important.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, the comment has to be meaningful. You don't want someone dropping by and just dropping in a comment and not reading your article, or because like Andrew, I reply to all my comments. That would just be time consuming. So yeah.
I had a funny comment on the genealogy and AI the other day, and I knew he was a spammer. I just a little angry thing underneath him. So I'll see he's gone. The looks well, I don't know about him, but the post, that particular comment's gone. I thought, oh, you were a bit creepy, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that it will continue to do. Oh, before we kind of button this up, I would love to get your feedback on, well, frankly, video as a whole and live video specifically. As you all know, I have used video in Projectkin extensively. I do these events, I record the events, the videos. I'm here to tell you, video works in terms of broadening the audience in particular. And I also find the transcripts very, very helpful as ways to go back and really think about what different people have said. They've just added live video. And I couldn't figure out what they were doing and why. And I think I'm getting a sense for it in terms of the short blurps. So I plan to be doing it. I'll to give it a month of just let you know I'm going to do it. Let you know I've already announced that I'm going to do it, of these little 15-minute, no more, live video sequence of just what's coming in the coming week, and invite people to comment on it. And some of you were already there on Sunday, which I appreciate. Any thoughts? I mean, tell me the truth about that as a mechanism. Would you use that feature? How would you use it?
I think two things that that I found with the one on Sunday is I hadn't looked at my email, and so when I did, it was like, oh, it's happening right now. And then the other issue for me was that I have to use my phone. I can't access it from my computer, which I don't
until it's a recording. You can as a recording.
Yeah. And so when I was trying to get on live on my computer, I'm getting scan this QR code, and I'm like, okay, this is really complex. Then I figured out, no, I just turned it on my phone and it worked. But I think that was the only thing. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good little way to promote. I think it'll take a while for people to watch for them because it's so new, like to expect it and not to just glance at the email and go, oh, this must be a session coming up. But,
Yeah. Anna, you look like you were about to say something.
Yeah, I think live video is something they have come up with because it's something that Facebook do and YouTube. You can do live videos, and they're quite popular in certain circles and communities, anyway. So I think it looks and feels like Substack is they're testing out different things that they are doing on other platforms to see what works and what doesn't work. And then it's up to the users of Substack to basically find out a way, can we use this? Do we want to use it?
That's exactly why I'm asking. I mean, live video has been around since Vine, which was bought, I forgot who bought which one, but that fundamental thing was around, and certainly in politics and sports and basically the things the kids do, it has been used. And I was poo-pooing it. And then I did all these video programs, which is great. And I said, but they can't share screens. You have to have it on the phone. You can't have more than 4 people. Why? But then I realized, oh, people know me. They'll talk to me. We know each other. And then it feels right. I would, the one we did on last Sunday was a blast. It was, at least from where I sat, it was a lot of fun. And perceptions seemed to be it was fun because we could talk to each other. But chatting on a phone, that's hard. Maybe that's just hard for those of us for whom near vision is a trick. I mean, yeah, these are different glasses for my desk. I don't know. By the way, the tip around that is you write it on something else and then paste it into the phone.
So if you're mainly using a mobile phone, it's really hard because you communicate with the chat. But if you're having a laptop or even like an iPad or something similar size, it's slightly different matter. So the after research thing that I'm joining and do lots of talks on in Sweden, it's on live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So they use a special thing, so they send it out on both.
Yeah,
and
we can actually do that now on strangely enough, we could do that now on Zoom. But well, how do they use it? Tell me how they use it.
So it's also just like this, about an hour, and they come up on the Monday, and they have just a short one where they say that this Thursday's theme is going to be this and this, and if you send us an email with a short story or pictures latest Wednesday evening, and you can join live if you want to, otherwise you can be just in the chat and they will read out your story. So some people never join live. I think it's easier if I join live because I know how to pronounce the names and stuff like that. But it's you have people who chat live with each other. So sometimes it can be like 5 or 6 people. So it's almost turning towards Zoom, while other times it's only the 2 hosts and everyone else is in the chat.
I've seen that on Twitch, where people do that on Twitch with watch me do genealogy.
Yeah.
There's a certain voyeurism of, oh, let me think now, maybe, oh, okay, good idea, I'll do. But it's like watching my dentist talk to himself as he's like drilling in my teeth and I can't say anything.
This is more like short storytelling or information. So it could, it could be information last time, I think it was last week, it was about what is happening this spring in the genealogy of Sweden. Sort of what different courses and meetings and happenings are. So, for example, on I think it's the 21st of January is the genealogy day in Sweden.
Ah,
So lots of associations and libraries and places like that open up for drop-ins where people can come and ask questions and maybe have a look at getting started. And then there's lots of courses, and then I think the government has just had a vote on so from 1st of July, I think this year, the police in Sweden are going to be allowed to use DNA family research for, like in the US, like finding killers and sort of finding serial rapists and sort of, it has to be sort of that kind of crime, or when they have John Does and Jane Does, trying to find who they are, where they come from, and who they are related to find who they are.
Yeah, just don't copy too much from here, just saying.
No, you know.
Yeah, I know.
They had a trial some years ago where a DNA family researcher helped the police to catch a double killer who had killed a little kid and a teacher about 10 years ago or something like that. It happened, or even more, and the police hadn't gotten anywhere, although they had DNA. And then the genealogists, they used the same methods that you use for finding unknown dads, for example.
Right.
So
Wow.
so it's not, it's not that you solve the case, it's part of how you get there.
Right. But you've given me an interesting idea, coming back to the live video question, of having potentially having it be a storytelling form, and have people be able to come in at a designated time and have the audience already agreed to come at that designated time and just tell their story live. Could be interesting, and have it be recorded.
Before Christmas, the theme would be, what Christmas memories do you have?
Yeah, exactly.
Your first Christmas memory, or your happiest Christmas memory.
Exactly. So we've just crossed over to the top of the hour, and as I said, I tried very hard to keep these within an hour. I noticed Andrew had to pop out. Before we close the session, Jennifer and Jane, is there anything else you wanted to add?
just that I'm still muddling around trying to work it out, and trying to work out how I'm going to do it. And every day I change my mind. And one day, hopefully soon, I'll settle on, my choice of archive. And then I've got my one place study to bring in. So that's a whole other story. So, yeah, I think we're all just figuring it all out. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise, I'm still working on figuring it out. I haven't figured out what to do with my one place study yet and how to push that out.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure that I'm about how I'm using Substack at the moment either, because I'm using just the plain simple Substack non-presentation type presentation, not for want of a better description. And so, I'm wrestling with whether I should actually make it into a presentation, and then I can have sections, and then I can put the one place study in as well. But yeah, I'm still trying to work all that out as well. I think there's Substack sort of has so many things associated with it. It takes a while to just sort of figure out how best you want to use it, really.
Exactly. So maybe that's the button to put on all of this really, is that it is a work in progress. And I think for all of us, it will probably continuously be a work in progress, even if chapters get closed and chunks get determined in terms of a workflow and a process and a concept and where you're headed. I also want to give everybody a reminder. You've probably heard this from me before. We have a sister platform, a sister community called Mission Genealogy that's specifically focused on using Substack for family history. And that's a collaboration between me and Robin Stewart at missiongenealogy.org. I am very happy. I run an office hours section over there, and I am more than happy to help anybody stuck, or at least be another voice to try to answer a question for you if I know or don't know, or know where resources might be for any category of things that you might be struggling with respect to Substack or questions of other things in general. There's a very specialized set of skills that I have. And I want to thank you both truly for all you've done, stepping up right here, my first program of the year, and into what is probably going to be a series in a new format, and just take the risk to put yourself out there. I know that's hard to do, and I truly appreciate your doing that. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the recording here, and you in our live studio audience are very welcome to stay and continue the conversation. Again, thank you so much to all of you.